What's up, YouTube? I'm Untitled Chapter. It has been 1 week since the beginning of the NFL draft. I am pretty much burnt out talking about the NFL draft, but I do have some final thoughts, so let's pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So welcome back to another episode of the show. I appreciate you tuning in and watching. For those of you that have newly subscribed, I appreciate it. I got 3 brand new subscribers just today alone, and they're people I don't know, like I had mentioned in my previous video. So this channel might be starting to gain some traction. I actually had a comment from someone that I was unfamiliar with, asked me my age out of all things. Just to address your concern, yes, I am old enough to drink. I'm 30 years old, born 1988, and I was old enough to know karate. I don't really know where I'm going with that. But anyway, a few things that I want to talk about in today's episode. So, about a week ago on Sunday night, I posted a 2019 Packers draft power ranking. So, if you haven't followed me on Facebook, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, go ahead and do that. I do occasionally post things so that I'm completely new to the Instagrams. I'm completely new to the Twitters, so that is a foreign topic to me, so I'm still trying to figure that aspect of it out. I am well versed in the Facebook world, so that's probably your go-to, but if you prefer to use those other methods, go ahead and check those ones out. But last Sunday, I posted this, and I just want to kind of break down essentially some of my thoughts on the matter. So looking at my power rankings coming out of the 2019 Packers draft, you'll see that I'm kind of all over the place as far as where these picks came and their importance on the roster. So when I came up with this list, I wasn't necessarily looking at where they were picked, but more so the impact that I felt like they were going to have on the Packers roster. So number 1, leading off the charge, Darnell Savage out of Maryland, safety. First off, I absolutely just love that name. I mean, Darnell Savage. I mean, I can already think of multiple Packers playlists that I can have for touchdowns and interceptions with Savage just kind of bringing home the interception, return pick 6. I love that name. He's going to be a big difference maker. So right now, you have him and Adrian Amos as kind of the new studs in that secondary. I'm going to dive into a little bit later here what each individual group has kind of gained from the draft. But I love the pick. I think he plays very fast, very aggressive, hard hitter. He's quick to burst. He closes those gaps really fast. So Darnell Savage obviously is going to be my number 1 overall pick. Going to number 2, Jace Sternberger out of Texas A&M, tight end. A lot of upside with this particular guy. So 75th pick overall. Coming out of Texas A&M, shares a lot of those qualities. Like I said in my previous video with Jimmy Graham, I think he's going to be mainly that kind of maybe a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in the Packers offense. You might also see him lined up on the offensive line or just off a little bit with Jimmy Graham. You're going to have those 2 tight end sets. I'm very excited with Jace Sternberger. Number 3, Rashan Gary, 12th overall pick. He's number 3 on my power rankings. That's kind of a surprise. That's honestly a surprise to me. Not entirely sure what we're going to get out of Rashan Gary. Completely like an athletic freak. Great stats across the board. Fast, strong, all the characteristics that you want out of a defensive end. He's going to probably be playing linebacker, but he carries all those positions very well. And I don't think he needs to be just a crazy monster of a football player when he comes to the team. I think he'll be just fine, with Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith and the rest of the defensive line. He doesn't need to be the star of the show. He can come in there and just, contribute the best that he can, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. I'd if he performs higher than that, I would be thrilled, but I'm not expecting him to just be our savior on the defensive with that number 12 pick. Running back, Dexter Williams, absolutely love the pick. The 3-headed monster in the backfield has begun. Jones, Williams squared, I guess is what we'll probably start calling him here moving forward. But brings a lot to the table, quick, all the essentials that I love out of a running back. Number 5, linebacker Ty Summers from TCU. 226 overall pick, that 7th round wonder boy. And to make a correction from my previous video, because I'm sure some of you may have noticed this, but Tom Brady was not a 7th round pick. He was a 6th round pick. But again, these drinks just, they start flowing and random things just start coming out. I'm just gonna take them. Yeah, hold on a second. Moving on to number 6 in my power rankings, Elgton Jenkins, Mississippi State. Guard, has a lot of upside as well, just like Jace Sternberger. It must be a Southern thing, but brings that competition to that offensive line. Absolutely love that they addressed the offensive line picks somewhere in the draft, and I'm glad they addressed it sooner than later, versus getting one of those late round offensive linemen. Number 7, my power rankings, defensive lineman Kingsley KeKe. Probably he's low on the list, but I consider him kind of up there with everyone else. 150th pick out of Texas A&M. Like I said in my previous video, they're gonna need Kingsley to essentially step up and kind of show what he's got, even in this first season. Muhammad Wilkerson is not gonna be back. Mike Daniels is probably not gonna be back after this next year. He's gonna require a lot of contract money. They actually just signed Kenny Clark's 5th-year option, so he will be back. They will definitely sign Kenny Clark again. But Kingsley KeKe has a lot to prove. I mean, we need someone else to kind of step up on that defensive line. I'll get to that in a second. And then the final pick, and I addressed this previously in my video before, Ka'dar Hollman, not my favorite pick. Not really thrilled about the pick. He might surprise us. He's been an underdog his entire life, but I can't get crazy about Ka'dar Hollman at this particular point in time. Second thing I want to talk about was the topic of undrafted free agents. Now, this is still a pretty big moving target. There's not a lot of confirmed, I mean, there are confirmed signs from all over the internet, but I don't see any updates to the Packers roster either on ESPN or Packers.com. So some of the ones that I do see kind of rumored out there, they have a wide receiver out of Colorado, a quarterback out of Arizona State, offensive tackle, defensive line, another cornerback, another defensive end, defensive back, wide receiver. So they're addressing some of those holes that I'll touch upon in later in this segment about where I think we still need to find some help. But these are undrafted free agents, and that's fine. I mean, there has been countless examples of undrafted free agents having success in the NFL. For example, you have guys like Kurt Warner, who was undrafted. You have Warren Moon, who was undrafted, had a very successful career. Tony Romo was undrafted, and yeah, he did good. He's an amazing analyst, but never won himself Super Bowl. Antonio Gates, one of the most successful tight ends to ever play for the San Diego Chargers. Rod Smith, wide receiver. James Harrison from the Pittsburgh Steelers was an undrafted free agent. You get the point. So there are gems in free agency that you can find as far as additions to your roster. They are very rare. So I'm not going to touch upon the undrafted free agents too much in this video, just because I want to actually see these signings come to the team. And then maybe I'll dive into that when we have kind of a lull in news between now and the start of spring training. The third topic that I want to talk about was just kind of breaking down these groups. So again, linebacker. So we drafted Rashan Gary and Ty Summers in the linebacker group. As I kind of look at what we have for a roster right now, I've talked about the Smiths plenty. We have Blake Martinez in there. We have Kyler Fackrell playing in there. We have Oren Burks that I think is going to have a huge season. Antonio Morrison, who was signed in the free agency kind of in the middle of last season, was brought over. He's still showing up on the roster. Reggie Gilbert, who has been underrated and had an amazing preseason last year and a couple glimpses of awesomeness throughout the season last year. These guys are still on the roster. There's a couple of names that I'm not entirely familiar with, but I think that they've truly addressed the linebacker issue. Now, the thing that I've noticed with Mike Pettine's defense, especially last year, is that there are people moving all over the place on this defense. So a traditional cornerback or safety might be lined up kind of in that linebacker role, kind of the nitro role that they refer to. So I think what we have at linebacker is very good. Is it great? No, but I think it's very good. I think, again, Blake Martinez, absolute stud, which by the way, that reminds me. I want it to be known that I was on the Blake Martinez train as soon as it landed in Green Bay. I bought my wife a Martinez jersey almost immediately. She wanted one of those Aaron Rodgers jersey that all the pretty blondes are constantly searching for, but I told her, you know what, this Blake guy, he's got something to prove, and I went with that one instead. Heading to the defensive line, we obviously added Kingsley KeKe to the lineup. Look at the rest of our roster there. You have Mike Daniels, Kenny Clark, Montravius Adams, Dean Lowry, James Looney. They have Rashan Gary kind of listed as that defensive end, but I think he'll probably bounce back and forth quite a bit as far as his role. But I love our defensive line. I love where we kind of sit right at this moment. I don't think they need to go out and sign anyone else when it comes to the defensive end position. I think they'll be absolutely set going into training camp. Injuries always can pop up, but I like where we're sitting as far as our defensive ends right now. Running back with Dexter Williams. Obviously, there's a lot of running backs showing up on our roster right now. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs currently on our roster. That's going to get cut down to 3 and maybe 4, but I'm fairly certain it's going to be cut down to 3. I think you're looking at Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and then Dexter Williams is kind of your 3 main guys. Maybe they'll hang on to someone maybe a little bit bigger that can play fullback for them, but I do see that our running back group is absolutely set. Tight ends also set. I don't see any holes as far as our tight end group. Jimmy Graham is gonna have a bounce back season. I would be absolutely shocked if he has the same turnout that he did last year. He was struggling through some injuries, and he was kind of just caught up in the mess of the whole Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers offensive fiasco. So you have Jimmy Graham, Mercedes Lewis is back, Jace Sternberger shows lots of signs of potential. He's going to be in his rookie season. And then don't forget about Robert Tonyan. He had a great preseason last year. And then he had that awesome 70-something yard touchdown against Seattle. He is going to be a viable candidate for this roster. I don't know if I see them keeping 4 tight ends. I mean, that's a topic that we'll talk about way down the road. But for sure, we have 3 guys on this roster that's going to be, solid tight end options for the team. Safety. Now, this is a area that I have a little bit of concern about. So yes, we have Adrian Amos, starter. You have Darnell Savage, starter. Outside of that, you have Josh Jones, who has shown great potential, but just hasn't really seemed to put himself into that starting role or put himself into a constant rotation with the Packers, unless they've been depleted with injuries. They show 2 other guys, Raven Green and Trey Matthews, in the roster as well. This is an area that I think the Packers do still need to find maybe someone to fill that role. We talk about Tramon Williams playing safety last year after Clinton Dix got traded away, which was kind of a sad day, but overall it worked out really well for us. I'm not entirely confident that the safety group is completely there if someone does get injured. So if we're talking about depth, the safety area is it could use a little bit more safety. I think that works, right? Heading on to offensive line, lots of guys on this roster. So 4, 8, 12, 14 guys currently listed in either the guard, center, offensive tackle positions on the roster. I take a breath. Let's just start with a drink on this one. So a lot of articles that I've read over the last week have said that the Packers still need to address the offensive line, and I don't know if I can disagree anymore. There is talent kind of all over this offensive line. Yes, you have the multi-million-dollar Aaron Rodgers right behind you that your job is to protect. But I'm looking at Bulaga. Might not be the best first start because he could possibly not make it through training camp. He's coming into his 10th season, has struggled with injuries. But David Bakhtiari, an absolute workhorse. Jason Spriggs is on the roster. You have the addition of Billy Turner, who is easily going to get a starting role on that offensive line. Justin McCray has been great. Cole Madison's coming back from being absent that rookie season. And then Corey Linsley, of course, absolutely phenomenal offensive lineman. And then you add in our draft pick and Elgton Jenkins. Here I thought I would mispronounce his first name. I stumbled on his last name. I don't see a need to go out and worry about our offensive linemen. These are guys that have proven that they can do the job. These are guys that have a lot of drive as far as some of these younger players to prove themselves. Cole Madison is definitely a dark horse in this entire equation. We're not really sure what to expect of him, but I absolutely love where we're sitting with that offensive line. No concerns there going into spring training. Cornerback. Drafted Ka'dar Hollman. I really got to stop beating a dead horse on this one, so I won't touch on it too much. This is a kind of a 50-50 place as far as how I feel about this position group. So you have veteran Tremont Williams. Hopefully he sticks around in that cornerback role. I don't want to see him shifting up to safety too much if we don't have to. Kevin King, again, boy, you just got to stay healthy. Just stay healthy. Josh Jackson didn't have the best rookie season, but he showed glimpses of hope. I loved his rookie, or not his rookie, I loved his college highlights when I watched him long before I ever started this podcast. The guy can play football. I trust him to cover a defender, but at the same time, he needs to take that sophomore jump from year over year, and I think we'll be good with Josh Jackson. Jair Alexander, timeout. So Jair Alexander, I love you. If you ever watch this video, I would love to maybe do like a one-on-one interview with you. You are a stud. You are going to do great things. I'm going to put you out on an island. You can take on whoever you want to take. Take on Antonio Brown, take on Fitzgerald, take on Randy Moss. I don't really care. I trust you to keep the ball out of their hands, and I couldn't be any more excited about Alexander. Listed off 4 names right there. Ka'dar Hollman is the rookie to the team. We're showing Will Redmond, Natrell Jamerson, and Tony Brown also listed on the roster right now. Not completely familiar with these names, so outside of the new addition of Ka'dar Hollman, this is an area where if someone gets hurt, we could find ourselves in a little bit of a pinch. I don't really know if that means you go out and sign yourself a free agent cornerback. Maybe they'll be fine running with just 3 healthy cornerbacks throughout the season, and then you have the mix of what you have in the secondary and linebackers. Who knows? But I would love to see a little bit more depth when we're talking about cornerback. But the draft's over, so we're not going to get any in the draft. So those are the areas that we have added to over the past week, whether it's in the draft or some of those unrestricted free agents. I think for the most part, we addressed a lot of concerns. Again, the only spot really that kind of jumps out at me that I'm not the biggest fan of is probably that cornerback group. And then it also kind of segues into the safety group too. Without Adrian Amos and without Savage back there, yes, Josh Jones can fill a role, and I think that he makes the team. I think he plays another year in Green Bay. But I would still like to see, one more guy back there that can fill in if we ever need them. So going from the position groups that we drafted to the ones that we didn't draft, and I still think that we need help with, the first one that has to jump out for me, and hopefully any of you viewers at home, is the wide receivers group. So we got rid of Randall Cobb, and if you didn't know that, that's exactly why I started this podcast, for breaking news that you can go straight to the source for. But yeah, Randall Cobb is gone. Obviously Nelson is gone. We have Devontae Adams as our number 1 wide receiver. And then I think number 2, you have to give that to Geronimo Allison, who struggled with injuries last year, but is more than capable of filling that role. And then it kind of just becomes a little bit of a mystery of who that next guy is going to be. Jake Kumerow. Aaron Rodgers loves him. I seem to love him in the preseason until he did that flip and messed up his whatever he did. And then you have Jamon Moore, who struggled with catching the ball, kind of fell down in that depth chart last year. Equanimeous St. Brown, and yes, I pronounced that on the first take, has a lot of upside coming into his sophomore year. And then you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who probably showed the most flashes last year as a receiver. And I said that name a lot at the Packer parties, so that's why that just rolls off the tongue very well. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I got it. So you got 3 guys who are coming into their sophomore year. You could maybe even say 4 with Jake Kumerow, but he did have a little bit of a stint with New England. But there isn't that next guy per se to jump out. If we're talking solely wide receivers and ignoring the fact that you have a target like Jimmy Graham or Jace Sternberger to fill that role, I would love to see some sort of receiver kind of come in. And I was going to say come back, because I'm still very hopeful that Jordy Nelson might don the green and gold once more. But I would love to see one more signing if there's any money left in that fact for them to go out and get a receiver, a veteran wide receiver, to help out and facilitate when it comes to the Davante Adams show that we're inevitably going to see throughout the next season. Next position that I kind of want to talk about, I guess, that they didn't address is quarterback. I am perfectly okay that they did not address quarterback in the draft. I would have absolutely lost my mind had they taken a quarterback anywhere in the top 4 rounds. But let's get one thing. Let's just be honest with each other right now. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm okay with Deshaun Kaiser. I think Deshaun Kaiser has much more skill than Brett Hundley, and him and his gum chewing. I think that we might need to give Matt Flynn a call, if anything, for a backup quarterback. But I'm not worried about finding this backup quarterback and to save our season if Aaron Rodgers goes down. If Aaron Rodgers goes down, the Packers go down. And it's a blatantly obvious thing to say, but I think people like to deny it. I think that idea of having a backup quarterback there in case Rodgers gets hurt, and I'm hoping that's the thought process too, because if the thought process is let's build a quarterback for when Rodgers retires, that's absolutely stupid. We don't need to be worrying about something that's 5 years down the road, because yeah, Rodgers has 4 more years on his extension, but I would be surprised if he retires after that 4 years. I think he's going to be kind of chasing Tom Brady at that point, playing into his 40s. So I won't talk about quarterback anymore. Aaron Rodgers, if you go down, Packers go down. There's nothing else that needs to be said about that. And then the last one that I want to talk about, the last position, if you will, that I want to talk about, there's a reason why I wore a number 30 Packer t-shirt tonight, and that is because John Kuhn was probably our last great fullback. Now, I had a lot of hope for Ripkowski. He had that amazing beard. I actually I mimicked that beard for a while until I shaved it and went to the Packers home opener last year. I don't see Matt LaFleur panicking because they don't have a fullback, and I'm thinking that they'll be fine with the 3 running backs that they currently have at the position. So they'll figure that half of it out. But it's kind of curious. We're going into another year without a fullback on the roster, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe they won't need one, and if they don't need it, I'm fine with it. As long as they're scoring touchdowns and I'm doing jello shots, I'm fine with it. We don't need a fullback. So I got a couple closing topics before wrapping up this video. So let's get the main one out of the way. If I were to give the Packers an overall grade for the NFL draft, I'm going to hit them at a B+. So scroll back up here to my power rankings. I'm very happy. I was pleasantly surprised. I think I said this in the last video. The more that I dived into the footage of these players, they found a lot of great talent later on in the draft. I think anytime that you can find a linebacker that has the potential that Ty Summers does, a running back in Dexter Williams, and you don't have to reach for a Noah Fant or TJ Hawkinson early on in the draft and get a Jace Sternberger at the 75th pick, I think those are win-wins across the board. They not only help your team, but they also help your cap space as well, because you don't have to pay these guys huge contracts in their rookie years. The only thing that keeps this draft from going to the A- or A tier is that wild card in Rashan Gary. I hope I am wrong with him. I'm not wrong often when it comes to this, but he has the athletic ability to be a disrupting force on that defense. And like I said earlier, he doesn't need to be the guy. He just needs to go out there and fuck shit up. I'm not entirely sure if I'm supposed to be dropping F-bombs on YouTube, but this drink keeps getting lower, and I had a couple more drinks before this. Solid B+ for the Packers draft class. I'm very happy overall with what they got out of their draft class. And then the other topic that I want to talk about in closing is the discussion that's taking place about how confident this Matt LaFleur offense must be. I had a comment, so I won't take all the credit for this idea in this next segue of commentary, but the Packers must have confidence in what they have at that offensive position. I think they addressed that running back. I think we got Rodgers. I think you have some tight ends. You have a studded offensive line. We'll figure it out at receiver. It could take some time for them to get rolling. I don't expect them to be lighting up the world in the first couple weeks, although they really need to have something together opening up against the Bears and the Vikings. But what the Packers have done and allowed themselves to do is have that kind of star-studded defense that we can all kind of get amped up and excited about. While the Packers might not be putting up 30, 40 points a game, the defense should be more than well equipped to keep the other teams, below 20 points a game, where the Packers should always be in it until they really kind of find their groove and figure out who they are as an offense. So that was a great thought that I had in my comment thread by Great Shadow, I believe, and that's why I encourage you guys to comment below, because I agree. I don't know everything that it comes to when discussing the Packers, and I don't want this to be just, hey, let's log in and let's watch Nariah rant. I have some good instincts when it comes to where I see the Packers going, but I love having that conversation. I love the comments down below, and I encourage all of you guys to continue to leave comments. Actually, as I'm recording this, I got my 4th subscriber today, so thank you for subscribing. My ultimate goal, of course, is to get to 100 subscribers. Just small little goals. That's what you gotta have when you start out. Once I hit 100 subscribers, I can change my URL to youtube.com/pouranother. At that point, it'll be easier to find. Again, subscribe to me on Facebook, Instagram, and leave comments down below. I feel like I'm rambling now, so this drink must be getting to me. So with that, I am closing, and I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.